A small boat with no crew, no cockpit, and no pilot, carrying two air-to-air missiles originally designed to be fired from the wing of a fighter jet, shot down two Russian Su-30 fighter jets over the Black Sea. Not a simulation, not a proof-of-concept demonstration in a controlled test environment. A real combat engagement, May 2nd, 2025. 3 unmanned surface vessels, 2 of them opening fire, both scoring confirmed kills against manned Russian combat aircraft. That single sentence represents one of the most genuinely unprecedented moments in the entire history of naval warfare. And I want to open with it stated as plainly as possible because the phrase floating carrier, the framing this specific story deserves, isn't hyperbole. It's a remarkably accurate description of what Ukraine actually built. By the time I walk you through exactly how a naval drone became capable of shooting down a fighter jet, what Russia's own military intelligence sources say this has done to Russian pilots' willingness to operate near these waters, and what's happened to this program since that first historic engagement, you're going to understand why the word trapped, applied to Russian Black Sea aviation, is closer to Ukraine's own stated assessment than any exaggeration this channel would need to add to it. Welcome back. I'm Ben Hodges. For those of you just finding this channel, I spent 38 years in the United States Army, the final several as commanding general of U.S. Army Europe, and in nearly 4 decades around military technology. I never once expected to describe an unmanned surface vessel as an air defense platform, because that category simply didn't exist as a meaningful combat-proven capability until this specific war produced it. That's exactly what we're examining today, a genuinely new category of weapon that didn't exist in any serious operational sense before Ukraine built it out of necessity. If you find this kind of technically grounded, historically aware analysis useful, subscribe, because we're going to keep tracking exactly how far this specific innovation continues to evolve. Let's start with the platform itself, because understanding exactly what a Magura drone is explains why this specific capability emerged from Ukraine, rather than from any established conventional navy. The Magura series, according to detailed reporting from the U.S. Naval Institute's own proceedings publication, takes its name from Magura, a Slavic warrior goddess, functioning as a military acronym for Maritime Autonomous Guard Unmanned Robotic Apparatus. The program is operated by Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, known by its Ukrainian acronym HUR, rather than by Ukraine's conventional navy, itself a telling detail about how this entire capability emerged, developed by an intelligence service rather than a traditional naval procurement bureaucracy, built specifically because Ukraine entered this war with essentially no meaningful conventional navy at all, and needed an asymmetric answer to a Russian Black Sea fleet that, at the war's outset, held total, uncontested maritime dominance. Let's talk about the Magura's earliest combat history, because the platform's evolution from a purely anti-ship weapon into something considerably more sophisticated didn't happen overnight. According to that same proceedings reporting, the Magura first came to public attention in May 2023 when 3 drones attacked and damaged the Ivanovets, a 4,000-ton Russian intelligence collection ship, sailing hundreds of miles from Ukraine's own coastline, a detail that immediately demonstrated genuine, extended-range operational reach rather than a purely coastal defense capability. By February 2024, Magura V7 drones became, according to that same detailed history, the first naval drones in the entire history of naval warfare to sink an enemy warship in actual combat, destroying the Tarantul III-class guided missile corvette Ivanovets, and separately sinking the Rapucha-class tank landing ship Tsezar Kunikov. Those 2 sinkings alone represented a genuinely historic first, but this channel's research confirms the platform's story was still only beginning. Let's talk about the specific moment this program crossed into an entirely new category of warfare, because this channel wants to walk through the mechanics of what actually happened on May the 2nd, 2025, in careful, verified detail. According to Defense Express's own reporting, citing HUR Chief Kyrylo Budanov directly, 3 Magura V7 drone boats were used in an ambush against Russian fighters in the Black Sea, with 2 of those 3 vessels actually opening fire on the approaching Su-30 aircraft. The specific weapon used, according to that same detailed reporting, was the AIM-9 Sidewinder, an American-designed, heat-seeking air-to-air missile that has armed fighter aircraft for decades, mounted onto the Magura V7's launch rails specifically for this naval application. Budanov himself noted that while several other missile types had been tested on this platform, the AIM-9 proved to be the best combination with a V7 hull specifically. Naval News, an established military technology publication, this channel's research confirms first published photographic evidence of this specific engagement, identified the missiles as capable of a maximum range up to 10 kilometers, mounted on rails that could reportedly be elevated specifically for launch, a detail this channel finds genuinely remarkable. An unmanned surface vessel with an actuated elevating missile launch system sophisticated enough to engage an aerial target. Let's talk about the physical differences between the V5 and V7 variants, because this channel's research found the engineering evolution between these two versions tells its own story about how rapidly this program iterated once its initial anti-ship success established proof of concept. According to Defense Express's detailed technical reporting, the Magura V7 represents a considerably enlarged version of the original V5, featuring a wider hull and larger fixed launch rails, measuring approximately 8 meters in length compared to the V5's 5 meters. That size increase wasn't incidental, this channel would note. A larger hull provides the stability and payload capacity necessary to actually mount and fire air-to-air missiles reliably from a moving sea platform. A genuinely difficult engineering problem, given how much more stable a fixed aircraft wing pylon is compared to a small vessel bobbing on ocean swells. Naval warfare expert H.I. Sutton, cited in that same Defense Express reporting, specifically noted this structural distinction between the two Magura variants, confirming the V7 was purpose-built as a genuinely different platform rather than simply a V5 with missiles bolted on as an afterthought. Let's talk about the R-73 Archer missile specifically, because this channel's research found Ukraine has actually fielded more than one type of air-to-air missile across this program, giving it genuine tactical flexibility depending on what's actually available or most effective for a given engagement. According to Kyiv Post's own reporting, Ukraine's defense intelligence adapted the R-73, a Soviet-designed infrared-guided air-to-air missile known under the NATO reporting name AA-11 Archer, originally built for aircraft, like the MiG-29 or Su-27, onto the Magura platform as well. That same reporting quoted a HUR spokesperson directly and plainly, "Such developments are effective. Russians are very afraid of them." This channel wants to sit with that specific quote for a moment, because it's not this channel's own characterization or a piece of Ukrainian propaganda messaging dressed up as analysis. It's a direct, attributed statement from Ukraine's own military intelligence service describing the psychological effect this capability has had on the Russian pilots, who now have to fly anywhere near these waters. Let's talk about what that same HUR spokesperson said about the broader strategic context surrounding this capability, because this channel's research found the full quote adds important texture beyond the single line about Russian fear. According to that same Kyiv Post reporting, the spokesperson explained that Russia's Black Sea Fleet, with the support of aviation and other components, has been putting pressure on and trying to create additional threats specifically against Ukrainian amphibious operations. That context matters, because it tells you this entire air-to-air missile adaptation wasn't developed in a vacuum. It was a direct, reactive response to a specific operational problem. Russian aircraft threatening Ukraine's own naval drone operations and amphibious capabilities from the air, a threat, this channel would note. Ukraine had no conventional air defense naval asset available to counter, since Ukraine's own navy, as this channel has already established, remained essentially non-existent in any traditional sense throughout this entire war. Let's talk about the broader cumulative combat record this program had already established even before the historic Su-30 engagement, because this channel's research surfaced detailed figures worth including for full context. According to Defense Industry Europe's own reporting on the formal May 2025 unveiling of this drone family, Lieutenant General Budanov confirmed these drones had been operational in the Black Sea for over 2 years by that point, successfully striking 17 Russian military targets and destroying 15 of them, a tally that specifically included 2 Mi-8 helicopters, 2 Su-30 fighter jets, and several Russian naval vessels. That figure, 15 confirmed destroyed targets spanning helicopters, fighter jets, and warships, all achieved by a single family of unmanned surface vessels operated by an intelligence directorate rather than a conventional navy, represents, this channel would argue, one of the most efficient and diversified combat records of any single weapons platform covered throughout this entire year of reporting. Let's talk about this specific December 31st, 2024 engagement this channel's research identified as a genuinely significant milestone in its own right, distinct from the more widely covered May 2025 Su-30 shootdown. According to Kyiv Post's own reporting, quoting the commander of HUR's Specialized Group 13 unit, known by the call sign 13th December 31st, 2024, marked a turning point in naval warfare. On that specific date, according to the commander's own account, 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters were destroyed and 1 was damaged, and separately, 2 fighter jets were taken down. That same commander offered a broader strategic assessment worth quoting directly, stating that Ukraine's HUR and Group 13 had pushed the Russian Black Sea Fleet back to their home ports, and that Russian forces are restricted in their movements and no longer fulfill their designated missions. That specific phrase, restricted in their movements and no longer fulfill their designated missions, spoken by the commander of the actual unit conducting these operations, is about as close as this channel has found to an official, on-record Ukrainian source using language that directly supports the trapped framing. This specific story's title applies to Russian Black Sea aviation. Let's talk about the broader financial and material cost this program has inflicted on Russia's Black Sea fleet, because this channel's research surfaced figures worth including alongside the more dramatic individual engagement accounts already covered today. According to reporting on Group 13's operational history, by August 2024, Magura operations had damaged 18 Russian vessels in 18 months, with a separate calculation attributing $500 million in losses caused specifically by the Magura V7 in its first year of public combat use alone. That figure, worth connecting directly to this channel's already extensive coverage of Russia's broader naval decline throughout this entire year, represents just the V5 variant's anti-ship contribution, before the V7's air-to-air capability had even entered service, meaning the true cumulative financial cost this entire drone family has inflicted on Russia's Black Sea fleet across the full span of this war almost certainly runs considerably higher than that specific first-year figure alone. Let's talk about what's happened to this program most recently, because this channel's research found a genuinely significant development that connects Ukraine's naval drone innovation directly to broader international defense industrial cooperation. This channel has documented in different forms throughout its entire year of coverage. According to Army Recognition's own reporting, on July 21, 2026, the company's U-Force and Reconcraft signed a memorandum of understanding at the Embassy of Ukraine in Washington, specifically to manufacture Ukrainian Magura unmanned surface vessels inside the United States. Under that agreement, U-Force USA, led by Sean Planke, takes responsibility for the American market, government relations, and software integration, while Reconcraft, drawing on an existing American boat-building base and naval engineering capacity, handles hull construction, system assembly, and industrial scaling. This channel would connect that development directly to the same broader pattern this channel has already documented throughout its coverage of Ukraine's Firepoint ballistic missile program and the Freya anti-ballistic interceptor coalition, Ukrainian wartime-developed weapons technology, increasingly being adopted, licensed, or co-produced by Western partners, specifically because it has proven itself effective in ways established. Peacetime defense industries never had the opportunity to test under genuine combat conditions. Let's talk about why that specific American production deal matters strategically, beyond simply representing a business arrangement between two private companies. A naval drone platform proven capable of shooting down manned fighter jets at a fraction of the cost of any conventional air defense missile system represents exactly the kind of asymmetric capability this channel has already documented, NATO planners studying closely throughout this entire year. In the context of Ukraine's naval drone campaign against the Black Sea Fleet more broadly, and in the context of the Freya Interceptor Coalition, this channel covered in detail regarding Ukraine's Patriot production license saga. This channel would argue the Magura's own combat record, sinking warships, destroying helicopters, and shooting down fighter jets, all using a relatively small, cheaply produced unmanned hull, offers considerably more combat-validated evidence of genuine battlefield effectiveness than almost any other unmanned system currently under consideration by Western defense planners, which likely explains why American companies moved specifically to establish domestic production capacity for this exact platform rather than a more theoretical or less combat-tested alternative. Let's talk about the broader strategic effect this entire program has had on Russia's Black Sea Fleet operations, because this channel has already documented extensively throughout this entire year the broader retreat and containment story this specific air-to-air capability fits directly inside. This channel's dedicated coverage of Russia's naval decline has already traced the fleet's retreat from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk. The repeated strikes on that final remaining anchorage this channel covered in exhaustive detail just days ago, and the systematic disabling of Russia's submarine force this channel documented earlier this year. The Magura's air-to-air capability adds an entirely new dimension to that broader containment story, one this channel hasn't previously examined in this much technical depth, because it means Russian naval aviation, the helicopters and fighter jets that would traditionally provide airborne escort, reconnaissance, and anti-drone protection for whatever surface vessels remain willing to operate in contested waters, now faces a genuine demonstrated threat, even from the exact naval drones those aircraft were originally intended to help suppress. Let's sit with that specific inversion for a moment, because this channel believes it represents one of the more genuinely remarkable tactical developments covered throughout this entire year of reporting. Russian aircraft were originally deployed over the Black Sea, specifically to help protect Russian surface vessels from exactly the kind of naval drone threat this channel has already documented, sinking multiple warships throughout this war. Ukraine's response wasn't to simply build more anti-ship drones to overwhelm that aerial protection through sheer numbers. The saturation approach this channel has documented across nearly every other domain of this war. It was to make the anti-ship drone itself capable of shooting down the protecting aircraft directly, collapsing the entire defensive concept into a single platform that threatens both the ships Russia is trying to protect and the aircraft Russia sends to protect them. Let's talk about the honest technical limitations of this specific capability, because this channel believes a balanced assessment requires acknowledging where this genuinely impressive achievement still has real constraints. The AIM-9 Sidewinder's maximum range, this channel is already cited at approximately 10 kilometers, represents a considerably shorter engagement envelope than a dedicated purpose-built naval air defense missile system would typically offer, and a heat-seeking infrared-guided missile. Whether the American Sidewinder or the Soviet-designed R-73 depends on detecting an aircraft's heat signature, a targeting method that can be affected by weather conditions, aircraft countermeasures like flares, and the specific aspect angle at which the target aircraft is approached. This channel's research found no evidence this specific capability has achieved anything close to a complete or guaranteed intercept rate against Russian aircraft operating in the Black Sea. The two confirmed Su-30 shootdowns and the Mi-8 helicopter engagements this channel has already detailed represent genuinely significant historic achievements, but they represent specific individual engagements rather than a comprehensive, reliable shield covering the entire Black Sea theater at all times. Let's talk about what Russia has actually done in response to this specific threat. Because this channel's research, while not finding extensive detailed reporting on Russia's specific tactical adaptations, did surface the broader strategic consequence this channel has already quoted directly from Ukraine's own Group 13 commander. Russian naval aviation operating with the knowledge that any given Magura drone encountered in these waters might be armed with air-to-air missiles rather than purely anti-ship munitions, this channel would argue necessarily changes Russian pilots' risk calculus for every single sortie flown anywhere near contested Black Sea waters, regardless of whether that specific mission ever actually encounters an armed Magura V7. That psychological and operational effect, this channel has already documented directly from the HUR spokesperson's own quoted statement about Russian pilots being very afraid, extends considerably further than the raw account of confirmed shoot-downs alone would suggest exactly the kind of asymmetric deterrent effect this channel has documented repeatedly throughout its entire year of coverage regarding Ukraine's broader unmanned systems campaign. Let's talk about how this specific naval drone innovation connects to the broader pattern this channel has documented across nearly every domain of this war throughout this entire year. We've covered how Ukraine's naval drone campaign, primarily through the anti-ship Magura V7, and the broader Operation Molotka, this channel documented extensively, struck at least 218 vessels connected to Russia's Shadow Fleet since early July alone. We've covered how that same broader naval drone capability disabled roughly half of Russia's operational Kilo-class submarine force using specialized underwater variants. We've covered, just this past week, the repeated strikes on Admiral Essen and Admiral Makarov at Novorossiysk, and the broader four-warship strike this channel documented in exhaustive detail. The Magura V7's air-to-air capability represents, this channel would argue, the next logical extension of that same broader innovation pattern. A naval drone force that began this war purely as an anti-ship weapon has since expanded into anti-submarine warfare, into strikes against fixed shore infrastructure, and now, with a specific capability covered throughout today's story, into genuine combat-proven air defense operations as well. Let's talk about what this specific capability might mean for the broader future of naval warfare well beyond this particular conflict, because this channel believes the implications here extend considerably further than the Black Sea theater alone. A relatively small, cheaply produced unmanned surface vessel, capable of being adapted to carry anti-ship munitions, underwater strike capability against submarines, and now air-to-air missiles capable of engaging manned fighter aircraft, represents a genuinely multi-role platform this channel would argue challenges decades of conventional naval doctrine built around large, expensive, single-purpose, or narrowly multi-purpose manned vessels. Every navy currently planning its own future force structure, this channel would note, now has a genuine combat-tested example of exactly how far a modular, adaptable unmanned surface platform can actually be pushed, from sinking a guided missile corvette, to striking a submarine at its own pier, to shooting down a manned fighter jet, all achieved by variations of what remains, fundamentally, the same basic hull design. Let's be precise and honest about what remains genuinely uncertain across this entire story, because this channel wants to apply the same careful standard here that it has maintained throughout its entire year of coverage. This channel's research relies heavily on Ukrainian government and intelligence sources, HUR's own statements, Budanov's own public comments, and the Group 13 commander's own quoted assessments for many of the specific claims covered throughout today's story, an inherent limitation given that these are, by definition, an interested party describing its own program's effectiveness. Russia's own government, consistent with the pattern this channel has documented throughout this entire year, has offered no detailed public confirmation or damage assessment regarding either the December 2024 or May 2025 aerial engagements this channel has covered in detail, meaning the specific claims of confirmed Su-30 and Mi-8 losses rest primarily on Ukrainian sourcing, rather than independent Russian acknowledgement or genuinely neutral third-party verification. That said, this channel would note the specific, technical, and photographically documented nature of these claims, actual published imagery of the Magura V7 with its Sidewinder missiles mounted, specific named naval warfare experts like H.I. Sutton independently examining and confirming the platform's design characteristics, lends this particular story a level of corroboration this channel has found considerably stronger than many of the more contested, purely rhetorical claims this channel has had occasion to flag throughout its broader year of coverage. What we can say with real confidence, because it's corroborated across Ukraine's own defense intelligence statements, independent naval warfare analysis from outlets including the U.S. Naval Institute and Naval News, and photographic documentation of the platform itself, is this. Ukraine's Magura V7 naval drone, an enlarged, purpose-built variant of the original anti-ship Magura V5, successfully shot down 2 Russian Su-30 fighter jets in a coordinated engagement on May the 2nd, 2025, using AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles, the first time in the documented history of naval warfare that an unmanned surface vessel has destroyed a manned combat aircraft. That same broader drone family has separately been credited with destroying or damaging 2 Mi-8 helicopters in a December 2024 engagement. Alongside the extensive anti-ship combat record this channel has already documented throughout this entire year, including the historic first sinking of an enemy warship by a naval drone in February 2024. Ukraine's own military intelligence sources describe this capability as having genuinely restricted Russian Black Sea Fleet movement and operational capability, language this channel would characterize as directly supporting the trapped framing applied to Russian aviation throughout today's story, even accounting for the appropriate caution this channel applies to any claims sourced primarily from one side of an active conflict. Widen the lens for a moment, because the Magura's own story connects directly to nearly every naval thread this channel has documented across this entire year of coverage. We've covered how Russia's Black Sea Fleet retreated from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk, only to find that retreat provided no genuine safety either. We've covered how Russia's submarine force has been reduced by roughly half through specialized underwater drone strikes. We've covered the repeated strikes on Admiral Essen and Admiral Makarov, 2 of only 3 completed hulls of an entire frigate class, both now sitting damaged at what this channel has already established as Russia's last remaining viable Black Sea anchorage. The Magura V7's air-to-air capability adds a genuinely new dimension to that entire containment story, because it means even the aircraft Russia might otherwise deploy to help protect its remaining surface fleet, to escort convoys, to hunt the drones threatening its ports, now face a documented combat-proven threat from the exact platform they were sent to counter. A navy that cannot safely move its ships, cannot safely fly its helicopters, and cannot safely send its fighter jets anywhere near the specific unmanned vessels supposedly beneath its own class of threat, is a navy that has run out of answers across every single domain this channel has documented throughout this entire year of Black Sea coverage. Here's the assessment I want to leave you with, because it's the one that matters beyond any single engagement's specific casualty count. A small, unmanned boat built by an intelligence service rather than a conventional navy, out of a wartime necessity that emerged specifically because Ukraine entered this war without any meaningful naval force of its own, has become capable of sinking warships, striking submarines, and shooting down fighter jets, all using variations of the same basic hull. That's not a minor tactical footnote in this war's broader naval story. It's a genuine redefinition of what a small, cheaply produced, unmanned platform can actually accomplish against a conventional manned military force, one this channel expects defense planners around the world, not just in Russia, to spend years studying and attempting to replicate. Russian pilots, according to Ukraine's own military intelligence, are very afraid of these drones. Russian naval aviation, according to the commander who actually built and operates this specific capability, is restricted in its movements and no longer able to fulfill its designated missions. Whatever comes next in this specific story, whether it's further engagements this channel will document in future coverage, or the broader international production and adoption this channel has already confirmed beginning in the United States. The floating carrier Ukraine built out of necessity has already, by every measure this channel has walked through today, done exactly what its name implies. Stay sharp, stay informed. I'll see you in the next one.